And our second collab of the week comes from a little closer to home, as we have two of Yorkshire's finest, Vocation and Brew York. And I am sure hoping this dessert isn't quite as sweet as that last one. Because as much as I do love me a good dessert stout, guys, that last one, it was just a little too much. But I have me a sneak feeling this one might be a little bit more on the traditional side, as today we have a chocolate and caramel stout with a little sweet temptation. And I can see here it's brewed with both oats and lactose, so those should add a lovely creaminess and maybe even a little body too. Although it weighs in at only 6.6%, so perhaps expecting that thickness of body that I truly love might be asking a little too much. And what have they got to say for themselves here? Sweet Temptation Chocolate Caramel Stout. With sweet notes of chocolate and caramel, this silky, smooth, rich and seductive stout is impossible to resist. So let's see just how irresistible it truly is. Let's get pouring. And as expected, this one has a much more traditional aroma. Notes of malty chocolate in there, a little smoky too, and some coffee notes just in behind. Subtle notes of molasses or treacle in there as well. And yeah, those smoky and roasted malts are the first thing that really tickle the tongue. And then that molasses and treacle is following in just behind, all the while being anchored by that dark, rich chocolate. And then it closes out with a nice bitter coffee finish. And to tell the truth, I am a little bit surprised. I was expecting that caramel to be just a little bit sweeter. Or maybe that's just the fallout from the previous beer. But here, it's more smoky or burnt caramel, more molasses and treacle than that over-the-top sugary sweet. And that body, it is a little silky, although the beer itself is just a tad overcarbonated to really be what you'd call smooth. And you are getting the sense that those oats and lactose are adding a little gravity. But even so, that carbonation, it does stop it from being weighty or heavy. And because of that, it's giving me more of a porter vibe than a good old stout. That's pretty lively in there. And now we're down into the beer a little bit. It's starting to develop some very fruity notes, very raisin-esque notes. Really starting to dominate along with that malty treacle. And I don't want to say that I'm a little disappointed, I'm just a little bemused, because if sweet chocolate or caramel was what you were expecting, it's definitely not what you're getting. Now, I'm not going to lie, this one here had me just a little bit confused. I had definitely been expecting something a little sweeter and a little fuller in the body, sort of as the name suggests. But sweetness, it sure wasn't the name of the game. And to be fair, even that chocolate was more of an afterthought than a defining characteristic, as it's those roasted and smoky malts and that burnt molasses that really steals the show. And as things wear on, things don't get sweeter, and those chocolate and caramel notes don't start to take a hold. In fact, it's the coffee and those fruity notes that start to make themselves more apparent. It definitely wasn't what I was expecting. And to further add to my displeasure, that carbonation, it definitely does kill any notion of creaminess or thickness in that body. In fact, for a beer brewed with both oats and lactose, there wasn't anything remotely creamy about it at all. And yes, I know this is the season of goodwill, but I am really struggling to say anything charitable at all. To be fair, maybe if it was sold as a good old-fashioned London porter, I might actually have enjoyed it a hell of a lot more. But it wasn't, so I didn't. I can only really judge it on what it says it's supposed to be, and not many of those promise notes really carry through. I was definitely expecting something like chocolate fudge cake, but it was more akin to a good old-fashioned Christmas cake, as midway those fruity and raisin notes really start to dominate proceedings. So maybe it is the beer you need for this time of year. But for me, Christmas cake has never really floated my boat. And I even checked the bottom of the can just to make sure it was still in date, and sadly, it was well in. And I know I've had infinitely better from both of these, so I'm not going to hold it against them. But as for me, until next time, have yourselves a very Merry Christmas.